Hello, this is Nicola from Kali Yoga Studio. Thanks for joining us today for another episode of Yoga Stories. And I'm talking today with Carol. Carol has been practicing and teaching yoga for quite some while. So welcome, Carol. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Maybe we can just dive in right away, and if you could tell me what actually brought you to yoga and what attracted you in the very beginning to it.
Okay, I actually began yoga by using a video that a friend gave me as a gift.
Yeah.
So I was in my basement with this beginner video, and it made me feel good. So then I started taking classes.
Yeah. When was that, if I may ask?
I was late 30s, so it was 25 plus years ago.
Shows our age.
Yeah, so I had a ballet background, so even though it was a video and I didn't have a teacher right at the beginning, I knew a lot of alignment things already, like safety things and where to have your knee in line with your ankle, and
of course,
posture and balance and things.
Yeah.
So, but once I got really into it, or once I made the decision, I found a studio and got an unlimited pass and went 4 times a week before work.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's dedication. So what do you think gave you that motivation to go actually every day and to stick with it?
Because I felt so good.
I just try to reflect on how the practice changed through all those times. You know, what I was looking for, what I was getting out of yoga when I started, and how that continued over those 25 years.
Right. So my first studio that I joined was an Ashtanga studio, where you basically start with the sun salutations and you don't stop moving for an hour and 15 minutes. So it was quite athletic.
Vigorous,
and I liked that because I was younger then. I could do it then.
Yeah.
And I did that probably for about 5 years. And I found that I think with all that repetitive motion and moving quite quickly, if you do one little thing wrong, I ended up with a sore shoulder and a sore hip. So I let that membership go and I took a little break, and then I found a studio that was more into yoga therapy, lots of props, and you'd sort of workshop poses, something different all the time.
Yeah.
And then that suited my needs.
And isn't that exactly the beauty with yoga, that it is so varied and that you can always find something that really works for your specific need in that particular time.
Yeah, you get, everyone has a different purpose, but it meets all these needs.
Yeah. It's about finding the right class. I think that's the tricky one.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and the right studio.
Yeah.
And finding the energy and the people that you, because for me, it's very much a social gathering daily now. Yeah. And it also gives structure to my day.
Yeah. I was not a very sportsy kid at all, so I never was in any team sports. It just wasn't my thing. Probably I wasn't that good at it. So yoga is really the only thing I actually stuck with for a long time. Which I know that even if I had gotten in any, ball sports or team sports or so, now in my age, I probably wouldn't still be doing it. No. So I often, try to think about what is it exactly with yoga that actually makes us come back every single day.
Yeah. Well, I know when I'm driving home from yoga class, most of the time I just sort of take a breath and I have this sort of euphoric feeling, because I'm sure, we release endorphins, and you just go, I feel good. I like that feeling. And it's worth it every day to do.
Yeah, I agree. But, you know, that euphoric feeling you would also get if you go for a run. Still, we don't go for a run every day, you know.
Right.
So what is it,
Well,
the thing that actually keeps us coming back?
I think for me, it works for my body, and I like the technique and the alignment and the. It's not just like I used to take an aerobics class when aerobics were, and I mean, of course there was some technique, but if you couldn't do it, you could just get your heart rate up.
Pretend and fake yourself through it.
But with yoga, it was you put your foot here, you place your knee there, you have your ribs here, you think of your shoulder blades here,
and it's amazing how that continues. No, even after 25 years. I still find some little things, even in simple poses, where, I haven't even thought about that little variation of what happens if I put a bit more weight on that arm and less on the leg, and it still happens to me.
Yeah, so you get a new verbal cue in your mind, and then of course teaching, you get to use it and pass it on.
Yeah.
So I guess, that comes down to maybe it's the mental part. Like it engages me mentally while I'm practicing. Yeah. So that's sort of the meditation part, that focus and concentration. Yeah. So your brain can't go elsewhere and worry about things.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess the physical aspect to choose the level of engagement and difficulty that keeps you challenged, the level of challenge that you can actually adjust that every single day. Yeah.
And there's so often, here's option 1, then here's option 2. If you want more, here's option 3. Yeah. And so everyone can make it suit their needs.
Also sometimes wonder that if I was attracted so much because of the non-competitive nature. And I just know that there are, kids that are just much more competitive driven, that find their motivation in, and oh my God, I'm so good, our team won or so. I never had that. No. Maybe it was that I wasn't good at anything. That's very possible. I didn't develop that. But I think it's just, a temperament, a personality thing that, yes, I wanted to be good, but it was more always a personal challenge. Yeah. And even if I did excel at something, I was never about to go out and brag at, oh, hooray, we won, and you're the loser. I always found, actually, I remember that as a kid in school sports, feeling, what is the purpose of making 90% of the kids feel bad because only one of the whole class
gets to win.
Succeeded? Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And not only with sports, things like even with arts, theater, when we had a play, and it was always the 3 same kids that got the lead roles, and all the others felt like idiots because they could be a tree maybe if they were lucky in the background. That was me. Yeah. So I think that is something that from the very beginning I felt it's something that I can do. Nobody bugs me to try to do better and jump higher and run faster. And with that I could let it develop on my own time. And yes, of course, you get better in some ways, or just develop in some ways. But it was never that competitive driven thing that you have to succeed. You have to get to the next level. You have to get to the better team and things like that.
And anytime you feel like you've won, it's an internal thing. Yeah. I mean, it's like, oh, I've been practicing this pose for a long time, and it was not yet, and all of a sudden one day, I can do this arm balance,
exactly.
or I can do this lotus pose that I couldn't before, or something. Yeah.
And it is surprising that how often you can still challenge yourself and, oh my God, I did not think I would be able to do that. I'm still working on my perfect handstands one day.
And if you stop practicing something and try it again, it's often gone.
Yeah.
Like you need to keep coming back to it if you want to keep it in your practice. But I was thinking, I like the fact that there's strength involved, there's balance involved. It's not just stretching like a lot of people think. They think it's all relaxing and stretching, and yes, there's that component, but there's so much more.
Yeah. So if you try to break it down a little bit and think, you know, from the poses or from the exact, you know, the exercises that we do, what do you think has actually, or what part of it, what component of it has the most, you know, most impact on your mental and physical well-being, as you described before? What is it that makes you go home and I feel better?
Well, I think it's having the breath with the movement.
That's right, yeah. Breath is a big one, breath and movement together, yeah. And then I really believe that it's that routine, that thing of coming back no matter what. Because certainly in my practice, you know, as a teacher, I notice so many people come and they might come and do the class and say, oh my God, I feel so good, amazing, and then don't show up for another 2-3 months.
Right.
Or maybe let me know the next day or the next week, oh, that was hurting afterwards, so I give it a break. And of course that happens, and that not to say that yoga is necessarily for everyone, but there is then, that other group of people that use that as a challenge to come anyway. And just moderate a little bit. If you hurt yourself yesterday, then maybe don't let another month pass before you start again. But maybe say, I come next week when I'm feeling okay, and moderate a little bit that one pose that I felt tweaked my knee, or skip that pose altogether, and find something that does work for me. And I think as soon as people realize that the first part is acknowledging where you're at and not where you want to be.
Right. So take the competitiveness out of it.
Yes, and for yourself as well, and make it as practice in you know, respectfully acknowledging where is my body at and what do I need. And you know, scale down from this thing. And I remember I've been doing it as a younger person, going to a new studio and right away saying, oh, I don't need the beginner class, I'm already at least intermediate, so I choose the more challenging. And probably I would have gotten more out of it had I done a few more beginners classes. But we all have that, you know, somewhat, that we think we want to work harder and that you know, that pushing is more rewarded at the end.
And I know what you're saying, because that I was in that as well. But then I would take a beginner class and get so much out of it and feel so good, and I think, you know, it's all there at all the different levels. Even if it's a restorative class where you're lying around on bolsters supported and breathing a lot of the time, or a yin class.
I honestly find real yin class is the most challenging.
To
really
stay still.
To stay still, to get over that boredom and, you know, the mental thing, what the hell am I doing there that doesn't do anything, and to getting a really deep stretch that often hurts.
Yeah,
you know,
be pretty intense.
Yin can be really intense, and I know that you have to adjust to not make it hurt, but sometimes that's tricky. If you stay in a pose for 5 minutes or 3 minutes, that can be really intense. For me, that is more challenging than going through the Sansalot Ashtanga thing, where you can kind of rush through it. I find it just interesting to reflect back on some of the main insights that I think I got over time. through yoga and different practices. And one main one was, and I did already yoga for quite some time. I already started teaching just 1 or 2 classes. I had my young kids at that time. And I was going to a yoga class, and somehow when I came back, driving back in my car, I heard myself, that inner voice, I heard myself saying, oh, great, I did my yoga class, that's one more thing I can cross off my, my daily list. Yeah. And then realizing, how silly is that? This is exactly what I should not do, right. To have it one more chore that you want to cross off your list. And just realizing that I was doing it even with my yoga class made me, I remember that I really made a conscious choice from then that I went to the yoga class when I actually had, was in the right space of mind to be present and to enjoy it and do it, put things aside and not do it as one more chore to cross off the list. And I think
that's good.
Yeah.
I always wanted to go. I guess there's definitely times when I'm more into it than others.
Yeah.
And then I would often think, oh, well, if I do nothing else today, at least I've had my yoga class or my yoga practice. Yeah. So that was always
And again,
something.
I think that if you allow that space to say, even if I go to the class and do nothing else than the first 5 minutes of breathing, and then I lie down in Shavasana and rest the rest of the class there, it's still something, and more often than not, you will find yourself doing this whole class.
Exactly. Once you get there and you're on the mat and you're in the environment.
It usually happens, and even at home, sometimes when I practice at home, let's just start with 3 sun salutes in the morning. And often half an hour, 45 minutes later, I'm still finishing things up because I get rolling.
I know.
You start enjoying it, and then interesting. And growing older, I really believe that that's one of the only things, beside my hiking, I do like my hikes, but I definitely see it's something that will accompany me until,
exactly.
Who knows, I can't move at all.
Thank heavens that we have that.
Exactly.
And I think the range of motion and the flexibility and keeping strength as we grow older and balance. Like people have trouble with balance as they get older. And
exactly.
It's
again, I think of all exercises or activities that you can do, yoga is the one thing that helps you. Get that mindfulness to hopefully get less hurt.
Right.
Because maybe you slow down a little bit and just realize where you're at and acknowledge what your body needs at that point of time.
If you do other kinds of exercise, it can be such a nice complement. If you're a cyclist or a hiker, you can use some different muscles in a different way to undo stiffness and soreness from that other activity. So absolutely.
The one thing where I really experienced it once, and that was actually, it wasn't yoga, that was Tai Chi, which is in many ways so similar in the basic principles. And I did once a horse riding and Tai Chi workshop, and that was really interesting to see how, not so much the physical technique, but just that centeredness and the presence, and with that the connection with the animal underneath. Made a real difference, and a huge insight that it is all about balance within me, balance with me and others, and that actually reminds me that's something that I really appreciated with partner yoga.
Oh, right.
When we did the acrobatic and partner yoga, this idea that it doesn't have to be a solitary thing, that you just do, you know, the balance within, which is great, but actually reflects in the relationship with another person, in that sense, physically the partner you work with. And I did that, of course, a lot with my life partner.
Right.
And I saw it really as our relationship therapy. Because truly, you know, when something was going on and we were not in sync, it was so obvious that it did not work so well physically to, you know, one supporting the other, holding the other in acro yoga. So we often had to, you know, sit down and say, okay, do we need to actually discuss something right now, or is it possible to put things aside for now, that we can meet on the mat and practice finding, for the time being at least, that presence and connectedness again. So that was actually a really
Very
neat experience.
Yeah. I remember doing some partner yoga in some workshops, and I'd always wanted to get with a partner that I felt comfortable with. Yeah. And if I was placed with someone that I wasn't comfortable with, I didn't want to do the partner work.
That's the tricky thing. So it definitely helps if you go with a partner,
or
with
you
a friend
have a friend,
or somebody,
or even someone who's sitting next to you that you kind of
or connect. Exactly. Oh, that's important. So maybe just to round up, if somebody was asking you, I have never done yoga before, I'm looking for something, what should I look for, how do I find the right class, would you have any suggestions maybe where to start?
Wow. Well, I would say just come and try some.
Yeah.
And certainly if you've never done it before, start with a gentle beginner class, obviously, right? Or restorative, or I would say
in your level, exactly.
And then you once you find a studio and a teacher, like you have said, you make a connection with your teacher, and that's partly what keeps bringing you back to a particular teacher.
Exactly. And I would also add, never shy away in telling the teacher beforehand what's going on
with your body.
Exactly.
If you have some injuries.
That, you know, because I know it from teaching, if you don't know anything about a person and then that client starts not doing the pose that you suggest or not doing certain variations or just lying down, you always wonder, did I do something wrong? You know, what's going on? Is the person just lazy lying there? But of course, more often they have a good reason to do so. And if you know, you at least completely, have more understanding and possibly can give variations or suggestions that might work better. Or such as say, you know what, it's okay to just lie down for a moment in Shavasana or Child's Pose and rest in between.
And so then as a teacher, if you know someone has an injured knee, and you're giving a pose on a knee, you can say, here's the alternative.
Exactly.
Lie on your side and do this, or on your back and do this.
So that I think is really important to communicate with your teacher and be okay not to do everything.
That's, even now I do things, I have a sore knee and there's times I do things and I think I shouldn't be doing this on my knee right now, but I still do it. Wow, so many different aspects to yoga. Certainly a lot more to talk about, but unfortunately we are out of time for today. Carol, thanks so much for coming in today and chatting with me. And thank you for listening. I hope you will join us for another episode of Yoga Stories. Thank you.